welcome to one more very interesting podcast here on the Nürnberg Messe channel. I'm your host Sonakshi Chakrabarti, and if you've been following us over the last few months, we've done a dozen of these interviews where we've spoken to industry leaders and experts, and today I am sitting with one such. I say that this is going to be interesting because it's not every day that you get to meet an architecture and a design expert who has just wrapped up the Scindia School in Gwalior in Madhya Pradesh. I am sitting with one such expert from the field of architecture and design in India with Mr. Adil Pasha, who is the executive principal and co-founder of Nostri Designs. Mr. Pasha, thank you so much for taking the time out and doing this and joining us on this podcast. Your first thoughts?
Thanks, Sonakshi. Thanks. It's great to be here on the podcast, and it'll be nice to speak to you in length about the IndiaWood this thing.
All right, so let's just kick start. I always begin by asking my guest what is the story of their company, the journey so far, and Mr. Pasha is somebody who has co-founded Nostri Designs. Mr. Pasha, what is the story of Nostri Designs? How did it come to be?
Nostri Design has been a very interesting story. It is Nostri Design now. Earlier it used to be Nostri Architects, and it was the most unexpected events of my life. I always wanted to start on my own at one point in time, but not when I was just in the first year of my marriage. And I happened to ask my wife that this is something coming up, should I do it? She said, yeah, when will you do it if not now? So I was actually working with a international design practice called Adil in 2007, and I met my very, very, very senior architect called Mr. Kevin Coulter, who's an American. He was based out of Singapore. He was also part of Adil looking at the Indian market from there where we first met in 2009. And we did a lot of projects together at Adil. And both of us, while working, we realized there is a big lacuna or a big opportunity in terms of doing executive level architecture. Now, if you ask me what is executive level architecture, is design is one component, and then take the design and get it built is another form of the architectural practice that we follow. So we saw this space where the executive architecture is not at the international standards in India. There are a lot of architects who are doing it, but they're not to the international practice. So we thought, let's solve this problem, and we got into doing that. And then we started thinking of names in 2010. What do we call this thing? And Kevin had this brilliant idea. Why don't our clients call us our architects? So that's where the Latin word Nostri came into picture, and we called ourselves Nostri Architects as to begin with.
Well, that's a lovely story of how Nostri Designs came into being. I think it comes from a sense of having a support system that really believes in you. And I think our architects, as you mentioned, is a lovely story. When you started your company and when you co-founded this, at that time, what did you feel was missing? You mentioned of lacuna, right? Of something of a lacuna. Yes. But so what exactly did you see missing, and what exactly are you bridging? What gap are you exactly bridging over the last few years?
Yeah, I think I probably touched that topic a bit briefly, but then just to expand that, a design component from conceiving it to a small sketch to actually having it built on site is like a huge process that happens. So doing the design is just 30% of the overall this thing. So the rest 70% is something that we realize that does not really happen in India with international standard procedures. So that's where Kevin came into picture, who's worked globally all across the world, Singapore, US, Europe, and then he wanted to implement the same strategy in India. And me being more of a executive level guy who of course loves design, but then he loves to build things more rather than just design. So that's where our strategies came into picture. We formulated the whole system of how the executive architecture practice will happen at Nostri. We set up standards which were in tune with AIA or American standards, all filing system, foldering structures, how drawings are actually made internationally. So we formulated all that. It all actually helped us with, working with ADAS also, where, a lot of international exposure is always there. So that's the bridge that we try to, fill. Although in these past 14 years of our experience, we've done a lot of design ourselves, but then we also do a lot of executive level work, which is based on international standards.
Okay, but it'll also be interesting for you to touch upon why do you choose a career in design in so maybe let's flash back a little bit more.
Okay.
Why did you choose to be in a space like this, architecture and design, and all your creative juices really flowing in?
Yeah, true.
What really inspired you?
And that's a very cliche question. I mean, and we ask these questions in a lot of interviews that we have for architects in our office. Why
It'll
did
be
you want
interesting to know now why you.
Yeah. Exactly. So, I mean, I would generally keep it very simple, because I've always been, since the very childhood, I've been more of an observer rather than, books, and reading was never my cup of tea. I would shy away from thick books, and no, I can't do that. I would prefer to go out, look at things, notice details, be in a lot of creative and art, doing models and stuff. So that's where my bent of mind was. And then over the years, when I did my high school, I had become very good in arts, engineering, drawings, and all that. So I till the time I finished my high school, I realized that creative side is something that I would prefer to have, because I can't do engineering or something that you have to put your mind to books and slog it out in terms of this thing. So that's where and architecture, of course, was one of the choices, but then I even tried my hand becoming a chef and hotel management, because that's something that also was somewhere in this thing. But then I think architecture got the best of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And speaking of architecture and design, where do you think this industry is, where does it stand today in India? And globally, how is the Indian architecture space and design really viewed? This is something I think a lot of us would also want to know. We always speak of India going globally in medicine, in science, in research, but what about really industries and sectors like design and architecture? So many creative students, youngsters who want to get into this space. I'm sure the ones who'd also be listening and watching this. Where do we stand globally? And in India, how is it like?
Yeah, I think the design and specifically architecture and interior industry has come a long way. I mean, especially from where when I finished my architecture, that's in 2000. I mean, you're talking about 24 years getting over, but it's come a long way since that time, and majorly because there are a lot of technological advances, with a lot of new softwares coming up, new technologies in terms of how you do drawings. I mean, I started off doing drawings on paper with hand, and now you have designs done on iPad. It can be done at home. I mean, you don't need to be an architect to design. So it's come a long way, and then technological advances. There's a lot of influence of international practices. There are a lot of buildings that are being designed, which are designed by international art. I mean, my earlier firm is still doing a lot of work here. So that the design philosophy, the design thinking has gone global compared to what it was. And plus, it was always there, but then India as a diverse culture and geography, there is a lot of expansion in terms of what type of architecture is coming through. And I think the amalgamation of both these things have taken us, there are architects who are doing projects internationally. We've done a couple of projects in the Middle East. We do projects with, we have an office in North Carolina, Charlotte, where Kevin actually sits, and we work on projects on American soil. These guys, our team there, work on Indian projects. So it's it's a very multilateral, multicultural development that's happening now.
And is the world globally as well viewing and acknowledging Indian design, Indian architecture as well?
Yes, yes,
How is it
exactly.
globally?
Yeah,
How
I
are we
mean,
viewed globally?
and I mean, we have a lot of award competitions all over Europe where when Indian architects are really getting the awards and recognition. So I think it's high time that we see and do even more large projects that we are doing now in international market.
Right. Speaking of projects and recognition, we'd now like to sort of deep dive into Nostri Designs. Talk to us and take us through some of your projects in the past that you've done
Right.
and projects, upcoming projects, and we'll then come to the recently wrapped up project
Right.
of the Scindia School. So
Sure.
take us through the projects that you've worked on over the
Perfect.
years.
So we started off Nostri in 2010 with a very intense, very complicated project. I mean, generally when you start a firm, you don't get such large projects. You start with small and then slowly build up. We had the other way around. We started with a project which was almost 2.5 million square feet, 25 lakh square feet, and which was wave one right in the heart of Sector 18 Noida, which is the CBD of Noida. The building is all completed at the last year and handed over. But then that was our first project. That's why it's very dear to us. But not only being the first one, but then it was a very unique project in terms of its size, scale, use. I think the first project in Noida that was a mixed-use project with an office, a retail, cinemas, everything packed into one small site. So that was one of our projects that we really. I mean, we keep working on that project because there's something or the other keep happening because of the scale. But then we worked on. We've recently finished a project in Kerala, which is group housing for a local developer there. And the project that specific project I like personally is because the level of vastu that goes into a project in South India. I mean, we do projects for individual clients here. That's quite understandable in terms of vastu. But then you have 700 apartments in a township which are perfectly vastu compliant. I mean, I'd never heard of this, but then that happens in South India, and then otherwise your inventories don't get sold off. So they're very, very particular about vastu. So we
That's interesting.
So for the first time, it was a learning curve for us working. But now that we're doing more projects in South market, we realize the value of vastu. Apart from good planning, good facades, good rest of the shebang of design, vastu is a major player in the South market. Yeah.
So these are some of your projects. What about, let's also now touch upon, like I mentioned in my introduction about the Scindia School in Gwalior. How was your experience like of the Scindia delivering that project? How did it begin?
Right.
And right from the start till the end, take us through the experience.
So one word I would probably summarize it's probably surreal.
Surreal.
So working with the royal family and Mr. Scindia himself has been a surreal experience, to be honest. Where and then it was not really just a small building that we did there. It was academic block, huge academic block for a heritage school, which is almost 70 years. I mean, they'll complete 70 years now. So it has to be, I mean, it can't be anything less than surreal. So we happened to, I mean, we did compete with a couple of architects on that. It was a competition, and then we managed to get the project to ourselves. And so we started planning. The basic brief was given to us by Rajmata Saab and the whole the Scindia management trustee, the whole management side of it. And the main concern that they have was, I mean, as we are all aware, the Gwalior climate is very hot
Humid
arid and this thing, and then it had to be designed with all the sustainability aspects in mind, with
We'll
all
come to
the
that.
so
Yes.
all the daylight savings, all the passive cooling, this thing, the landscape around it somehow shades the whole this thing. Although the building was air conditioned, but then the rest of the areas, which are common areas and everything, had to be on the similar temperature levels without getting into mechanical ventilation. So it was challenging. And the other aspect of the design of that school was, like I said, it's a heritage school, 70-year-old school. You had buildings which were from British era, and then the school had been developing as phases all throughout. So they had the building which were very modern, very colonial kind of buildings. So we had to relate to all of them at one place, So, and then there was a British era building called Kamala Bhavan sitting right next to the site that the building had to come in, and then we had to relate the facade to Kamala Bhavan, make it more historical as the old buildings were. And that was a big challenge to get that similar philosophy in terms of facade as the old buildings in this thing.
So a surreal experience to have worked on the Scindia school, and your experience with Mr. Scindia himself, a minister, and a little bit about your interactions with him. How was it really to work with somebody who we see as a political figure, but also has a school, a heritage school,
Yes.
running up and running? How was that like?
I mean, I would really commend him in terms of the level of inputs that he used to give in terms of planning and what he wants from the school. Even though he's super busy in terms of his schedule, but he had, I think, Scindia School, the brief that came to us as an architect's brief was bang on, pinpoint, perfect. I mean, we don't get these kind of clear briefs even from developers here nowadays. But then he was very thorough in terms of what he wants and this thing, and that probably made our lives even much more easier compared to what the other projects would have been, and we were able to deliver it much faster than any other project.
Right, so a surreal experience and an impressive brief by Mr. Scindia himself.
Yeah.
I'd also like to know, who do you take inspiration from when you do these projects? As in, I'm sure you have somebody, I don't know, an ideal or somebody who you really look up to, a mentor, but what really keeps you going and driving, kicks in that drive to take up each project? What is the inspiration level like?
Right. I mean, generally, when we're doing a project, we don't take inspirations from a particular architect. I mean, my personal inspiration for any project comes with the local environment, where the site is, which kind of people will actually use it, what is the actual purpose of the building. That's where the overall philosophy or the story of the design for that particular building revolves around. But then generally, if you ask me, there are a lot of architects that inspire me. I mean, my first boss, Mr. Hafiz Contractor, I had the privilege of working with him directly, because once as a junior architect, you don't get to work with Mr. Contractor on this thing, because you work with their associates and this thing. But I had the fortunate this thing of working directly with him, interacting on a lot of concepts with him that I worked with, and I really salute his, the level of time management, the client management that he has, and that's what the clients actually want, that he understands their requirements thoroughly, and then delivers to probably the most fast-paced projects that I've ever seen in my career with him.
So Mr. Hafiz Contractor is
Yes.
one of your
Yeah.
inspirations. You mentioned sustainability, and that was something that we were coming to, and you touched upon it very briefly, but my question really more is on the larger front. Sustainability has become a buzzword. To some, it is a buzzword. To some, it's a business model.
Right.
But globally, and not just in India, globally, everybody is talking about sustainability, whether at an individual level in our households or at school institutional level and in schools and colleges,
Right.
or whether it is at in businesses. People are in business corporate offices. They're all pledging to go sustainable and taking an oath, taking that sustainability pledge.
True.
But let's narrow it down to an architect. Every sector really is, like I said, is taking that pledge. In the architecture and design space, how relevant is this word sustainability? And if at all it is, then how do you incorporate sustainability in your business as well? And I speak this in specific terms to your business.
True.
Do you at any level incorporate the idea of sustainability? And if so, how?
True. Like you correctly said, every field is going into sustainable development, sustainable approach. But I think sustainability to anybody or to us is much more important as compared to the other fields, because we are at a point where everything starts off. We draw the first line for a habitable indoor space or outdoor space. So if we are not sustainable, I mean, the rest of the processes will suffer. If we don't introduce sustainable measures within our design, the buildings will still have very high, emission rates and all that. So I think we are at the forefront of, at least for the construction industry, as it may happen. And then with the climate change and everything that is happening now, I think sustainability in terms of design is much more important, in order to mitigate all the problems that we've had, with respect to bad planning or bad implementation that has happened in decades beforehand. So I think sustainability is something that we generally cater to in all our projects. And even though there are a lot of government norms that have come up to developing sustainable developments, but in general, private projects also, we try and implement as much sustainable processes as much as possible in this thing, without having the client to spend extra on sustainability.
And is there any particular project that is entirely like a sustainable project that you've done, or you intend to in the future taking up?
Not entirely, because you don't have the systems that helps the buildings to come up entirely sustainable development, but then we've been able to at least do 60-70% in terms of sustainable developments, depending on what targets you have.
All right. Yeah. So Nostri Designs certainly does take a sustainability approach. They have that approach in their business, and that's good to know, because even at Nuremberg Messe, we take the word sustainability very seriously in our business as well. In fact, even in our offices, we reuse as much as we can, we repurpose, rejig as much as we can. And last few questions, Mr. Pasha. What makes your company, exclusive or stand out from the companies in your ecosystem, your contemporaries? What really makes Nostri stand out from the rest? What is your vision?
I think if you ask me, standing out, there's a lot of factors that we think we stand out from our competitions. The first and foremost being that we are very diverse in terms of the scale and size of projects that we do. We do projects which are very small, 1,000 square feet project, to probably 3.5-4 million square feet of projects. And then like we've done probably a small salon which is 800 square feet, and then we are doing buildings which are 50-60 story, but then they are really large in scale. The other aspect is that we are very diverse in terms of our portfolio, in terms of sector based designs. Like a lot of clients actually ask us, what is your forte in terms of design? Do you do residential, commercial, or what do you do? So we are not able to answer that question, because we've done residential, we do commercial, we do schools, we do hotels, we do industries, we do airports. So all that gamut of projects is something that makes us, because there are a lot of architects that at least I've met that are very forte-based projects. And then internally we also do architecture, we do interior design, we do landscape design. So it's a very diverse portfolio that we have that gives us an edge. And then, like I said, the very basic concept of starting Nostri Design was to do international level of documentation, executive, this thing. So whatever processes that we follow are very different from what the architects follow here. So that's where we are able to do international projects, and we are able to implement the same international standards on the Indian projects as well. So that's where I think the edge comes out. And then we come across a lot of architects who come to our organization to work, and then they realize that the standards that they've already worked in for many years is quite different from what we have. So and they're quite happy about it.
All right. Let's focus a little bit to now IndiaWood. As you may be aware, IndiaWood, one of our biggest shows at Nuremberg Messe that spans over 4 to 5 days. It's upcoming in February of 2024 in Bangalore.
Yep.
And IndiaWood is that one platform we've created for industry leaders in that particular industry,
Sure.
in the woodworking industry, in the machinery industry, wood machinery industry, to come together and exhibit their not just products at the exhibition hall, but also each product, what is the vision, what is that they hold for the future, for the Indian woodworking industry in the future.
Right.
For architects and for architects and designers in this space, wood is also a very important,
Yep.
Not just as a material, as a source, but
Right.
it just holds a very huge importance for architects as well.
True.
And there are several types of woods to speak with, but we'll not get into that. But
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you about what do you feel of incorporating a depleting source such as wood.
Right.
It's a natural but a depleting resource
Exactly.
to mankind.
True.
Help us understand from an architect's perspective, to incorporate wood in this business. And
True,
how is it really?
I would just like to first talk about IndiaWood. It's a very interesting platform where all the interior designers and the furniture guys, woodworking guys come together, exchange ideas. So I think IndiaWood is probably doing a great job in terms of organizing all that. And like you correctly said, it's a depleting source. So a lot of people would probably understand that why do we do a wood expo where it's a depleting this thing. So you need to make people aware that how you can regenerate, how you can sustainably use the wood and its byproducts. So it's a great I think platform to exchange ideas to make it much more sustainable as to how the products can be. And your other point of incorporating the other,
from an architect's point of view.
I mean, we try and use, and it's not that any project that we have a lot of use of wood. I mean, your door frames still are wood, the windows are still wood, you still use wooden paneling and all that. But then there has to be some way that we can still give back to nature rather than keep using it as this thing. So you have a lot of form of wood panelings that are coming up which use wood material, but then they are not entirely wood based. So I think these kind of expos help to develop these kind of technologies and products in the coming future.
And we look forward to having you on board at IndiaWood as
I
well,
would love to be
and
there.
your association with IndiaWood and Nuremberg Messe as well.
For sure.
A last couple of questions. A life lesson that being in architecture has taught you, a desire, the designer in you. Every profession teaches you something or the other. So for an architecture, what has life really taught you so far? A life lesson, and something that you'd like to impart to future architects and designers and some people who'd like to get into this space as well.
All right. So I would probably answer the second question first, where for the future architects, and then because a lot of times we come across freshers coming to our organization, and they get frustrated in terms of what have they got into, and because of the low gestation periods, compared to their friends who are probably into IT and all that, the pay scales are lesser and all that, so they can't be a comparison. So I generally try and in colleges tell them that, be 200% sure that this is something that you want to get into, because it's not everybody's cup of tea. Even in college, it's not really like a normal college. It's quite a gruesome curriculum for 5 years that you have to keep doing drawings, submissions, and stuff like that. But then what I feel is in our curriculum, we miss out on the practicality aspects of actually working in a firm, working on site, seeing how things get built. So I would recommend to anybody who's planning to be an architect that you should work with a small firm during your course of architecture. See how things are running in the office, see how things are getting built, see how an interior works, how a building is constructed. So by the time you come out 5 years, you know where you want to go, which line you might be interested in just doing interiors, you might be interested in just doing landscape design. So you will be very clear. A lot of times, in fact, it still happens that a lot of architects that come out really don't know what they want to do. So I would just recommend that you follow this process, and you'll be in much better position as what.
And I see that you're trying to avoid the first part of the question, a life lesson.
Life
you have
lesson.
to tell us a life lesson as well.
Life lesson, being an architect, I think I've become much more, I'm sorry.
A life lesson, it's fine. It's okay.
Life lesson, I'll have to think about
so
it.
Far.
So
it's all right. Even, I'm sure.
Nothing as of, I didn't prepare for this. So the life lesson.
We cheated. I showed you this question.
Yeah, but I didn't prepare for it. But I got this 5 minutes before.
A life lesson, as an architect, I don't know, like patience or something. Like as a journalist, I've learned more to be accepting of a lot of things, the realities around us. To different people that we meet and all. As an architect, the creative juices in you.
Right.
I don't know, a life lesson.
So probably a life lesson that, one of them could be time management. That's something that we really work hard upon, because every client wants their things get done as of yesterday. So that's something that we really work hard. We have to keep everything on track so that the schedules don't go for a toss, and especially when it comes to a developer, they everything is ticking for them.
Right.
They've invested money, they need to start selling, they need to come out with advertisements, marketing, this thing. So everything has to be this thing. So I think major life lesson has been time management in this field.
And my last question would be that a dream project or somebody that you dream to work with, or a project that you really have in mind, or let's say a certain kind of a theme that you'd like to work around, a dream project.
Yeah, like we're talking about IndiaWood, I would want to do some project. In fact, we've done a couple of them in the US, but then we want to really work on a wood-based development, or probably something to do with bamboo and all that, or some sustainable development which is to a larger scale. We've done projects which are sustainable, but then to a smaller development, but then something that is large enough. So that's probably my dream to
IndiaWood, and that's not too far away. We'll make sure that comes true.
Yes.
Because at Nürnberg Messe, that's what we do. We create a platform for our exhibitors, for potential visitors and exhibitors and future businesses to come on board, associate with us, and we really try to create that platform, that one-stop shop where everybody can come together, exchange ideas and values. And I think Mr. Pasha has said that he'd love to be associated with IndiaWood, and we'll make sure to make that wish come true.
Definitely.
Thank you, Mr. Pasha,
for
taking the time out and doing this
podcast.
And what did you think about it?
Perfect. Yeah, I think it went very well. There was no requirement of takes unless you feel
not at
the
all.
Other way. So
I thought it was absolutely fine. For an architect who knows everything, I should be asking you, was it all prim and proper?
Yeah, it was fine. It's just that, according to you, because you guys are experts in this, so what to say, what to stop.
We'll edit some bits
I'm
out.
sure it can't be this
All
thing.
right. Stay tuned to the podcasts on the Nürnberg Messe channel. I am your host Chonakshi, and I promise to bring you lots more interviews with lots more industry experts and lots more people that you would want to listen in from. Stay tuned.